Hi, and welcome back to my channel. Sorry, I disappeared for a little while. A lot going on. So today's topic is going to be a continuation on the introduction video. One of the things I mentioned is that there is a massive difference between where you would like to work, where you'd like to live, and to explain that a little more, living there more like a nomadish or working online if you're in the tech industry or teaching online or really just vlogging or whatever, and travel as in like tourism. In this situation, I'm not going to dig deep into being a tourist as much as working somewhere for a short period of time. For example, like a summer job or a winter job or something like that. So most of this is going to be focused on middle class jobs. So before I start, well, what defines, in my opinion, a middle class job? So it's basically any job that is less than $120,000 a year if you are from, well, any country that uses dollars. So if you're Australian, 120,000 Australian, US, 120,000 US, Canadian, and so on. Obviously, if you are from a more expensive city, it's going to be your expectations would be much higher, and for you, a high salary would be something $200,000, $300,000 or above. While if you were from, bumfuck nowhere, and you're making 60,000, and you think that's a high salary, well, it's not for the rest of the world. And don't screw up the rest of our salaries by thinking that you got a really good deal by getting paid $60,000 a year. Okay, unless you're fresh out of college with less than 2 years of work experience. And when I say $120,000, I'm talking about the take home. I'm not talking about the offered salary because some countries, like the Gulf, usually don't deduct any taxes. So whatever they offer you is usually what you'll take home. While other countries it can be anywhere up to 30 or 50%. So also another thing, I have not personally worked in South America. I do know people who have, but I wouldn't say my background knowledge is enough to fulfill your needs. What I can do is give you the general advice going into other details, and then you can do your specific research about that country that you want to go to. Because I don't like generalizing. Some people say, "Oh, South America is dangerous." Not all of it. Africa is dangerous. Not all of it. Like you have to know. You need to do your research. There's also a massive difference between Northern Africa, Southern Africa, Central Africa, East Coast, West Coast, and all that. Africa is massive. All right. Another thing to take into consideration, if you are or have been offered a job in a war zone or a potential war zone, um, and there's a million ways to find out, just Google the country and find out, when was the last time they went through a civil war? When was the last time they had, political unrest and whatnot? So you need to know what you should be expecting when it comes to salary. And the baseline internationally, doesn't matter what industry you're in, is if it's a war zone or a potential war zone, it's typically triple the salary. So if the normal salary, like let's say it's an accounting position, the normal salary is $80,000 a year, then you need to be making $240,000 a year minimum. Uh, Plus, you need a life insurance policy in your country. Do not accept a life insurance policy that is in that country because if it's in a war zone and you end up dying, well, who's going to go to that country to go and file it and claim it and all this other stuff? So you need to make sure that the life insurance policy can be claimed in your country. I'm sorry, a lot of people don't want to think about that, but it is the reality for a lot of people all over the world. All right, so before getting into what type, if the country that you'd want to work full time or live and work like off the grid or just a short period of time, some things you need to take into consideration are the weather slash seasons. So, for example, right now I'm based in Southeast Asia, and the weather is 90% of the time the same year round. It's either sunny or stormy and rainy. That's the weather, right? If you're from Florida, you know what I'm talking about, right? So, do I miss snow? Do I miss seasons? Seasons not so much. I do occasionally miss snow. I miss being able to just go out. But that's something you need to take into consideration as well, because there are countries and cities that are very far north that are just cold year round. You might get to see the sun, but you're going to be wearing 3 layers the entire time? Are you somebody who can withstand that? Are you somebody who enjoys that, right? Or do you skin's extremely sensitive to humidity? That's something I found very common in high humidity places. You can tell even with like the native or like the people who are originally from there, you can tell who's usually mixed by how bad their skin is. And that's because, well, their ancestors aren't necessarily from that region, and their body cannot withstand either that much humidity, or if you're in the Middle East, that much dry air where it ends up cracking all the time no matter how much water they're drinking. So this is something you need to look into. Of course, cost of living. Some countries they offer a lot of money, like Switzerland and a lot of the Gulf countries, but the cost of living is insane. If you go to my Instagram, which I finally started posting, or I put the link, but I think there's a post on there. Qatar had tomatoes for the average cost was somewhere around like 30 to 40, which is about 10 to 15 bucks, if I remember correctly. That's insane. That's for a kilo, which is about 5 or 6 large tomatoes. But that's insane. It's like $3 to $4 per tomato. Now I don't know what you're used to. Maybe if you're from LA, that's normal prices for you. But for the income I was making for Punta, it wasn't worth it for me. $6,000 a month, and you're spending about $2,000 to $3,000 of it on rent, and then $2,000 to $3,000 on it. Food. Well, how much am I saving? Also, I got a bunch of speeding tickets because they have cameras everywhere. Next, the culture. This is something I have only learned through experience. I've never heard anybody else mention it, which uh, is a country for single people? Is it a country for people who are dating? And is it a country for people who are married? So, for example, here in Southeast Asia, if you are in Thailand, I would not recommend it as a married couple who's never been or worked abroad. It can be a massive culture shock if you're not from the region or if you've never been to the region before, and it can cause a lot of relationship issues because it's just kind of all up in your face. Well, just one country south, which is Malaysia, and it's the opposite. You don't want to be here unless you're in Kuala Lumpur. You do not want to be here if you are single or even just regular dating because there just isn't enough to do. You have to be like a family oriented unit where you do everything as a family, and preferably you already have kids and everything because that's the culture of the country where basically young single people study, find a job, save money, get married, have children. That's it. And you can claim that, oh, that's everywhere. No, 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 not systems in place for single people. A lot of single people, you might luck out if you come here single, but most likely it's just going to be something short term, something, not really um, not even short term. Honestly, it's just not even worth the trouble, to be honest with you. But it's one of the reasons I chose to be in Malaysia. Uh, the Gulf countries are quite similar when it comes to that as well. You don't want to be there while you're single. You will feel lonely and you will feel ostracized because most people who did their research knew do not come unless you're already married. Next, which is a key one, safety. There's of course the overall safety. Like Spain, for the most part, is not safe, even though it's I'll bring this up later, but it's in Western EU. Well, if you're in Barcelona or Madrid, it's the pickpockets and the night times and everything's a bit of an issue. While there is also gender safety, and everybody knows about the situation in India. It's not safe whatsoever for women to travel alone in India, even if you're a group of women, unless you have an arranged tour. But again, that's not what we're talking about. We're talking about work, which means that you need to be there consistently. You need to be able to trust that you can go home without having to have security guards and all this other stuff. Does that mean there's nowhere in India that's safe? No, of course, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is if you're a normal worker, you don't want to have to be worrying every single day about your safety and well being because as an expat, you already draw attention without having done anything. Like, screw my hair. Like, even if I had a normal haircut, normal everything, I would still draw attention. And expat women draw even more attention in those countries. So be aware of the safety issues. Labor laws and visa laws. I'm going to dig a little bit deeper into this, but I think I mentioned it before. Yeah, make sure, or at least my recommendation is make sure you're going to a country that respects labor laws that you are accustomed to. So if you're used to the abuse of capitalism from the US, you might not have a problem with the abuse of capitalism in Singapore. But I do, even though I'm American. I've just lived abroad for too long. While, if you're a European or French or something where you're accustomed to having like when office hours are done, that's it. You might not want to choose a country that the government will not follow through with protecting your rights. The company dynamic, that's different. That's something you'd have to negotiate. But knowing that the government stands with you is kind of key. And visa laws. I'll dig into that in a second. One last thing before going into visas is how to transfer money in and out of the country and in what currency. So, for example, when I was in Turkey, I could send Turkish lira and I could receive dollars. But the reality is, I couldn't find anywhere that would give me US dollars. Or they would want to give it to me at a different exchange rate than what was actually on my receipt. This is through Western Union. And through the banks, also you need to set an appointment in advance if you want to collect it in dollars. It's a complicated system. So do a little bit of research about that. I don't think it would be a deal breaker unless you need quick access to funds. Like if you're somebody who's leaving on their last leg, like this is my last of my savings, I need to make this work, and I have payments back home, and I've got a mortgage, and I've got this and that and the other, then yes, figure out how you're going to get the money out of the country. Okay, so visas. So there are work visas, tourist visas, study visas, work and study visas, and nomad visas. Nomad visas are new for the most part. Okay, if you go somewhere and you want to study, and then you're like, oh, you know what? While I'm here, I'm going to work. You should find out what the local laws are because some countries will actually allow you to work and study within a certain age range. Typically, it's under 25. And that's because, well, they know young people do not have money, they don't have a savings, they don't have anything like that. But it's always better to double check. Um, don't do it outright. You can always volunteer, um, and they supplement your expenses, but don't actually do any illegal work by working on a tourist visa or working on a student visa. Now, you can get hired on a tourist visa. That is a legitimate thing, as long as you have the contract. And that's just my recommendation to you: is if you have the contract in your hand, you know it's a job, it's legit, and everything's good to go, and they've already, everything's already in the process. Going there on the tourist visa and starting your work while you're waiting for the process typically is fine. It's legal, 100% legal, because it's already in the system. You're just waiting for it to get put into your passport. Some countries, though, will not accept that. In some countries, that what they'll end up doing is you can fly in on the tourist visa, you can do the visa application in the country, you can start working, but then you need to exit and come back in on the new work visa. But typically, the company will tell you that in advance. If they don't mention anything, it doesn't hurt to just reach out and ask HR while they're talking to you. Okay. Now, work. Okay. These are countries where it's just getting a regular job. It doesn't matter what you're into. My recommendations would be Western Europe, China, Taiwan, Central Asia, and that's about as far as living and doing your own work, be it YouTube, blogging, tech, just even if it's calling it in type of situation. Um, I would recommend Southeast Asia, like Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, and the Eastern EU, like the Eastern Bloc, because the cost of living is pretty low and it's very convenient, but the salaries for regular jobs aren't good enough for you to fully supplement your cost of living with a decent, like you can definitely work there, but when you leave, you'll leave with nothing. So my recommendation is to at least consider other sources of income. Um, yeah, and then last is travel. These are ones I working in them if it's not necessary, or unless you're getting a really good deal, or you're not, like, your whole point of working there is that I want to go there, I want to see this place, right? Would be like Turkey, Japan, South Korea, the Gulf countries. I know a lot of people promote the Gulf. They're like, go work in the UAE, go. Right. If you are, again, this is not talking to people who are from countries where $2,000, $3,000 a month will change their lives, right? If you're from one of those countries, then yes, the Gulf is very drawing. It's very much like, come, yes, 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 yes. But and that's not take home $2,000, $3,000 salary. Your take home at the end of the month is going to be like $200, and you're like, well, who the hell is working for just $200 if it's not your home country? Well, they're probably from a country where $200 a month is more than what they would make as an entire salary, anyways. And that's why you find a lot of the like workers in the Gulf countries are from those nations. They're from either the coastal African countries or the Central Asian countries or other lower income Middle Eastern countries. And of course, Egypt. No, no, no. No. Do like a summer program, like a month or two, teach some English, or I don't know, that volunteer to work at a restaurant, getting paid local or a little bit higher than local, working on tips or whatever. Like, just enjoy it as a trip. Don't actually try to work there. Um, Now, some issues with traveling. You need to consider access to opening a bank account. Some countries will allow you to just open a bank account. You don't even need to be employed there. You can do it on your tourist visa. Now, why would you do that? If you're carrying a large sum of cash, obviously you don't want to be carrying that everywhere you go. You don't want to leave it in your hotel or your Airbnb, or if you're staying long term in your apartment all the time. You're going to need access to a bank account, especially if you need, somewhere to receive your money. At the same time, it gives you a better idea of what your options are for banks. So, for example, personally, I like doing my research about the different banks and finding out which banks work out best for me. And so, even if my employer is like, hey, we want you to open a bank account with them, and I'm like, okay, well, what are the benefits? Are they giving me like a opening bank account bonus, or is there a better interest rate for keeping a savings account? Like, what is it? No, okay, then I'm going to stick to my bank account. And I've never had an issue. I know a lot of people are shy to bring these things up or to mention it, but there's nothing wrong with it. So my last 2, 3, 4, 5, I don't even know how many jobs, most of my coworkers had the bank account that the company opened for them. And then I had my own personal bank account. And for example, when I was in Shanghai, I had, what was it, China Construction Bank, and I had HSBC. And personally, China Construction Bank, or sorry, ICBC. China Construction Bank ended up doing me dirty. HSBC did me dirty. I ended up figuring out which bank worked best for me. You have to remember I was there for almost a decade. Which bank worked best for me, and I could always access. Never had any issues with going out with my friends and my card getting declined in the middle of the night because it was an unusual purchase, even though I did that every single weekend type of thing. So these are things to be aware of. Being able to withdraw your money in what currency? I mentioned this already before. Some banks, or sorry, some countries, you can only withdraw foreign currency from a particular bank. So, for example, in Turkey, if I remember, it's the Türk Bank, and then in China, it's Bank of China. That is literally that bank you can get a foreign currency. If a bank tells you you can get a foreign currency from them, it's usually not you're getting it from them. What they're doing is the bank manager wants your account, and they are going through the trouble of going to Bank of China, getting that foreign currency and getting it for you, which means you're gonna have to like have a 2 to 3 hour wait. Well, if you just have an account with Bank of China, you can just get it in 15 to 30 minutes. All right. Getting a SIM card. Holy smokes. This is the one that drives me the most nuts. There are countries, as a tourist, you can get a SIM card in the airport, right? It's like a 1 week to 1 month SIM card. But then once that SIM card expires, because it's in the arrival section of the airport, you can't get another SIM card. Your number gets disconnected, and you go pay for it, and they're like, yeah, that was a tourist SIM card. And they're like, okay, well, I want a SIM card. South Korea is like this, Japan's like this, from my understanding. And it's an issue. It's a You're stuck. your bank account is linked to that phone number, all of your online stuff, like if you've already changed everything over. So don't assume because you can buy a SIM card at the airport, that means you get to keep that for the entire time that you're working there. I've literally gone through this because I bought a SIM card and it didn't require registration. And then I lost my device. So I wanted that phone number again. And I went to the cell phone company and they were like, okay, give us a phone number. I was like, yeah, this is a phone number. And they're like, okay, well, the SIM card's not registered. And I'm like, but I've been using it for a year and a half. And they're like, yeah, but you never registered it. And because you never registered it, we don't know if that actually belongs to you. You could just be some random person trying to steal this phone number. So unfortunately, we can't help you. And I lost my phone number. And that's it. All right. And renting an apartment. That's another big issue. Some countries are not very welcoming when it comes to renting to foreigners or expats, especially if you come from particular backgrounds. Some are just like that in general. Like Japan is just, from my understanding, it's just that's the way it is with everybody, no matter where you're from, as long as you're not Japanese. While some other countries, it's more of a racial discrimination issue. Don't take it personal, is my advice. If you go to see an apartment with an agent and you like the apartment a lot, and then the landlord comes to sign the contract and they see you're a different ethnicity than they're willing to rent to, and they're like, they either ask for more money, because that's happened to me before where they end up asking for double. And I was like, I'm not going to do that. And they're like, well, I guess you're not going to get the apartment. And I was like, okay, I see what's happening here. I laughed. Was I disappointed? Yes. But I told the agent, you owe me. Now you need to find me exactly what I'm looking for because I like that place and I was ready to sign the contract and you weren't able to pull through for me. So that's basically it. I think I really covered everything. If you have any questions or if you feel like some of my information needs updating, especially the salaries part, let me know down in the comments below. Like, share, subscribe, do the things. Thank you.